Okay.
Oh yeah. There we go.
So, so us Americans, just day drinking is like a normal thing during a pandemic. I think day drinking actually for a lot of people now is just a regular thing during a pandemic. Um,
Yeah.
Go figure.
And we are live. Welcome to the RME Syntax Roundtable discussion featuring Victor Chaga over in London and Adam Barber in Los Angeles, California. Welcome, guys, and cheers.
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 Thank you for hosting us today. Thank you for the opportunity just to geek out on technology and talk about the industry.
Yeah.
Victor, so so before we started, to anybody that is just logging in, Victor and we were just talking about setups, and I guess we'll just start from there. So I was just talking about how like I'm trying to go smaller. You had a something.
Yeah, well, I think it's not only the size really, but the flexibility of it all. And I feel like as composers and music editors, basically anything to do with music for film, especially, we have to stay so flexible in terms of not only coming up with new ideas, but also listening to people we collaborate with, be it the directors or the producers, and being able to fulfill their ideas basically on demand and as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I feel like in general, the industry, that's what, I mean, Bernard Herrmann used to take about 6 months to do a score, right? And they would show up and he'd have his first music meeting and say, okay, play an idea on the piano and say, this is what I feel like doing and this is what I think it should sound like. And I'll see you on the scoring stage in 6 months.
Yeah.
Whereas, today with a lot of these gigs, especially on a smaller scale, you usually get an idea the night before and you have to produce a full-blown, orchestral mock-up by 6 a.m.
Yeah.
the next day.
Overnight.
And I feel like that's over the years, at least during my time, that's been becoming more and more of the norm. And we've been learning how to sort of get around that and get better at it. And the only thing that's slowing a lot of people down from a technical standpoint, I think nowadays, is this old idea of having a studio space, really.
Yeah.
Building a space that sounds good, that is technologically advanced, that fulfills basically your needs as a composer and a music editor. But at the same time, if you do that, I think today, really, you lock yourself into a room, basically. And with a society that's more global than ever, one of the ideas I had a couple of years ago, is rather than investing in a space, sort of investing in kit and being able to be mobile, being able to work with the people directly that you're collaborating with, and saying, rather than you sending them demos or, calling bi-weekly meetings, working next room to them so that they can pop over anytime they feel like it and sort of talk about the work that you guys are doing together. And so I feel like technology, as you were saying right now, we're sort of trying to condense the rigs that, you were remote back in the day. You remember?
As were you.
Filled with servers and 12 computers per rig or 14 computers per rig and stuff like that. And right now, I think all the rage is about the old laptop and an interface that's bus powered so you can keep working wherever you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's so if you're just signing on, Victor and I, we were talking about going from an office or a studio space to a mobile rig. And that's basically what I've been researching. So I've been in my recent research and upgrading, transitioning. So I have the concept is I still want to have my room. This is my permanent writing room and creative space. But like you said, I think you need to still have that connection and be mobile and be able to come out and produce actively with the artist or the people you're with or supporting. And so I'm looking at different options. In fact, I'm looking at Dell, a Dell small form factor.
Right.
I have a couple of iMacs, and I'm just kind of testing different setups. And I think I'm coming up to something. So I think I'm going to have the bad thing that I don't like about the iMac is you have the screen. But I think the good thing about the iMac is if you have the 27-inch, you have a 27-inch screen that's already there. So I'm playing with that. I'm looking for cases that I can transport it in.
Right.
I've noticed there's bags that you can put over your shoulder. There's hard cases. Those are kind of expensive. So I'm kind of seeing what I can do with that. But I think I'm gonna have an i9 iMac, and the reason being laptops are great. I think once the M1 catches up with more RAM, that's definitely like the next option. So I don't want to invest in a laptop yet, because my friends with the i9s, they love them. They're great. You can put in, what is it, 64 gigs now?
Yeah.
8 terabyte hard drive. But once you start pinning the CPU, the fan spins up really loud. Granted, that's not always the circumstance. So I thought maybe I could fight that fan situation with an iMac and then wait till an M1 laptop comes around. I've heard really good things about how effective it is with heat and power and all that stuff. So yeah, so I'm looking at those scenarios right now. And then of course bus powered, what you said, have everything bus powered, keep it minimal. So the other idea is I'm going to buy another ARC. So I have my ARC right here always, and I don't want to like, there, where's yours? Yay! Yeah, it just makes everything really just flow amazingly well. So, but I also don't want to pick from my setup. I want to have everything in a bag as much as possible. So I'll get another mouse or Kensington Pro trackball, another ARC. I have the Digiface Dante, which is great because it's bus powered, and then you have a stereo headphone out, and then you have Dante, and if you need, you have MADI on it too, coax MADI. So I'm thinking I'll have that bus powered. I'll have my headphones. I'm thinking about getting a Clarity, TCM Clarity, so I can go out of the Dante network, somehow get into AES into the Clarity so I can monitor levels.
Right. Yeah.
I have a concept that it's in the early phase, but basically, so that's kind of the monitoring setup. I don't know what I'm going to do for actual monitors. But yeah, so there's that. And then I have actually 2 Digiface Dantes. So if I need, I can have a little Pro Tools playback and then a Pro Tools production rig. And then those will both be together. And maybe one's a laptop, maybe one's an iMac, I don't know. So one would be for picture. And I'm thinking like the laptop could be picture, and then the iMac would be more robust for editing and whatnot.
Well, Dante and AVB in the same sense is very great for that matter. Again, talking about flexibility, right? It's because you can change the routing on the fly.
Yeah.
Really. So it doesn't really matter which rig is your Pro Tools rig and which rig is your
exactly.
Rig. You can just, with a couple of clicks and a saved preset, you can flip and flop as much as you want.
Yeah, and then what I love about AVB is just the sample rate. You don't lose channels on the sample rate, which blows me away because like everything else, unless it's AES, you lose channels. So that's like really appealing. But I've built my setup around Dante, so I'm in that Dante world right now. So I have to. It's just a minor thing, but I think they're both great. So I have a question for you. You sent
Oh, yeah.
a picture. Yeah, you sent this picture. I want to talk about this picture. So I'm gonna share this really fast, so people can see what we're discussing here. Earlier, Victor
basically, you're pinging the ball over, so I can talk and you can have a sip.
Have a sip. Exactly. Let me share screen. Here it is. Boom. So tell us about this picture that you sent earlier.
Oh man, well, with a bit of background, I've sort of got into the RME stuff at remote control, actually, because Hans has been using it on his kit for a very long time, and everyone working with Hans has been using it for a very long time and has been very flexible. And since the early days of total mix and everything like that, and extreme channel counts, etc., we were started building smaller rigs, again, trying to cut down once the MADI cards came out. And then the MADI router, when that finally came out, just blew our mind, because finally we could get rid of ADAT and go completely MADI once we could route, separate channels to everything. And basically those rigs, those computer rigs, as you know, would max out. Basically Pro Tools, an HDX3 system would be the limit, with 192 channels with 3 MADI boxes, basically. And so large channel counts, and then the ability to route everything back and forth, covered the digital world. And the only thing for composers like Henry Jackman, for example, was we had a lot of analog gear as well, a lot of synths and things like that, and we needed to be able to pipe that into, again, the Pro Tools rigs, or Logic when he was using Logic for sequencing and stuff like that. So we started using the M32s, the analog to digital converters. And what that allowed us to do was basically take 32 channels of analog inputs, line inputs, and convert them into MADI to be able to pipe it into the network. And again, using total mix, send it everywhere we want to, be it the Pro Tools rig or the sequencer or anywhere else, basically, with minimal latency. And so building on that idea, when we, what happened was we missed a recording session last year. We were working on the pre-production for The Little Mermaid, and we were able to get basically all of the songs covered with the orchestra and the singers and everything right before the pandemic hit. And the only session we couldn't do was a massive cast session for one of the songs, where we had 25 singers basically singing at the same time. And now that all of the studios are closed, well, the studios are open, you can record orchestras and stuff, but basically no choir has been allowed to work due to COVID restrictions and the limitations of space and everything like that. So the only way we could get this done was to go rogue and take one of the stages, massive new stages at Pinewood Studios outside of London, a film stage, not a scoring stage, and space them out enough to be able to record them. So they were all standing about 5 meters apart.
Wow.
And saying Simon Hayes, who is a recordist and sound mixer, we devised this when Cats, actually, which wasn't an amazing film, but technologically it was a first for us. We had these DPA microphones basically mounted on everyone's foreheads, because everything was CG aside from the face. You had a really clear sound and going into a radio transmitter, basically. And so all of these ideas came together for this recording session, where Simon Hayes had 25, I believe, microphones, radio mics set up on set. All the actors were mic'd. And then rather than recording it onto his equipment, we decided to go into Pro Tools because we had the prelays, the orchestral prelays, or the music rather recorded into Tools. So we wanted to record into the same session so we could keep with the continuity and make it much easier for the guys in post to work on this later on. We wanted to just go into that same session. And the guys at Syntax UK, like I said, Mark and Martin were amazing and lovely and allowed us to basically loan this unit, the new M32 Pro analog to digital converter. And we were able to pipe that into that and then go via MADI into my UFX Plus.
Nice.
And get all those guys into Tools. Yeah.
Nice.
It was a bit of a proof of concept because we're going to Sardinia to shoot on location in June. And the way our rig works right now between Simon Hayes and myself, we have to send each other audio over basically 12 channel looms, 50-meter looms, 100-meter looms of copper that are quite heavy and bulky. And now that this worked, we're actually looking into a MADI network running over light pipe, basically. Alva makes these cables up to 300 meters long.
Yeah.
So we can have most of the guys up on the hill somewhere with me on the beach, or a couple of us on the beach with MADIFace Pro. I did say that right. Piping however many channels of audio we want over a light pipe MADI cable. And
Wait, so the MADIFace, you're talking about the MADIFace Pro, the little, like the baby face one?
Basically the thing that looks like that, or the baby face.
Yeah, I have one of those. Those are great. So that's really cool.
Instead of ADAT, it's got MADI. And it's actually a bit more complicated than that because Simon's recording, again, tons of microphones and whatnot. And we were able to find, again, with help of the guys at Syntax, we were able to find these boxes called Prodigy MC from a company called Direct Out. And they are modular digital to analog converters or back. So you can stick 2 MADI cards in them, you can stick Dante cards in them, you can stick AVB cards in them. And then on the analog side, you can do anything from mic preamps to line ins to AES, basically anything you want.
Nice.
And so instead of, again, having all this kit that we need to lug around, the idea is having one box that's an A to D on one end with all of the radio mics and all of the analog mics and stuff like that going into it. And then another box on Simon's end that would convert it back into, from MADI back into the AES and analog world so that he can actually record it. But the actual network is going to be one of these boxes and then 2 different computers with 2 MADIFace Pros, all just piping things back.
Over hundreds of meters.
Over, yeah, half a kilometer probably.
Wow.
He's down the cliff.
Yeah.
See.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, congrats on like the latest, on this, on the start of this. I mean, taking it from the proof of concept, basically what you just did, you're like, this is going to work. And now taking that on the road.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Amazing.
It was a couple of us putting it together, again, with a lot of help from Martin, Mark, and now that we've sort of committed to it, it's going to be very interesting to see if it actually works.
I'm sure it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Now that Disney have spent thousands on it.
It's going to work. I know it. It's, what it always is though? It's always the setup. It's always like the day of setup. You're just like, this isn't working. And then all of a sudden, like at the end of the day, right before you go get the last meal. Oh, it works. Oh, great. Okay, thank goodness. Now we can start tomorrow. Yeah,
absolutely. So. And one of these things, again, some of this kit. Basically, I'd like to always find the kit. I don't like working around things or finding workarounds.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of those in my day, and I'm sort of gotten a bit too old for that.
Yeah.
Like I found finally being like coming up as a tech or as a tech assistant.
Yeah.
And always finding things. I've finally gotten to that age in my life where I like don't know how social media works, or I have one phone that I know how to use. If I find another phone, not only do I not know how to use it, I really don't care about knowing how to use it. And it's been my motto for the last couple of years, which turned my life into complete bliss in terms of, rather than trying to fix things, finding software or hardware that just does what I want it to do, basically.
That's yeah, absolutely. It's funny. That's, I guess, as we've grown more in our careers, it sounds like you need that. You need the item, whatever item it is, that accomplishes the correct task, efficiently effective. You have to step up, and you're like, this is my career, this is my industry, and this is what it calls for. I don't need a workaround that goes through 2 or 3 boxes to get something done. I just need one box. This is the price. That'll help me work more effectively and get the job done more efficiently.
Well, not only that, but I think you're familiar with that as well. The situation where a lot of my work nowadays is in front of tens, if not hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? The last thing you want to do is be seen fumbling around trying to
troubleshoot something.
Work, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and in that sense, the RME, again, using yesterday's session as an example, to go from a very complicated playback rig where you've got 10 channels going out of your computer or your Pro Tools session, all with different submixes and, going to 10 different places, basically to convert that to a full-blown recording rig, a completely different setup, within, I don't know, a half an hour of setup. And then after that, just click on a different workspace in Total Mix, and being able to do that is incredible. Because if you think about it from a hardware perspective, back in the day, to convert a room from one setup to another, like imagine converting studio.
half a day, if that.
Yeah,
maybe longer.
Six guys and working overnight,
Yeah.
So I find this kit and the way it's been designed quite intriguing in that sense.
Yeah, that's something. I guess that's just, I think I take that for granted. The presets, the workspaces, going through the presets. Like today, setting up for the Zoom, I have a preset for Zoom, for the loop back, so I don't have to think about, I got to go. So I'm going into the MattyFace XT right now. So I go into the MattyFace XT, I hit loop back, comes back in, I select that in Zoom, and I'm good to go. I think I have like a high pass filter and a little EQ, so like I have a little AC going, so hopefully you don't hear that.
A bit of lovely reverb.
Yeah, I can throw a little reverb on, maybe a delay and get creative. Yeah, and then the presets, then I have all these other presets for laybacks, listening, because I have Pro Tools and Logic, and I guess I just take it for granted now, those presets. But when you think, like, along with the conversation, I've used other interfaces that just don't have that flexibility, and you got to go into it. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention this as you were saying that, and not to throw shade on by any means. But do you remember the old Omni interfaces they had?
Yes, I do. Very
Very
well.
Very flexible. And then you go into one of these rooms where people are still using them, and they're like, "Oh, hold on, I can't play my OS. I can't play this like YouTube or Spotify or whatever out of my Omni. I have to sort of take my line out of the computer and then plug it into the Omni and have Pro Tools on to sort of listen to." And I'm looking and I'm like, "You're about 15 years behind, buddy."
Yeah. It's like and that's the prime example. Oh, I have to do this workaround. And it's like, that's just like something you should never have to say in a session.
Right.
Wow. I've had plenty of those occasions. We all have. And I don't, the Omni, when it came out, wow, I was like, wow, that's a really great concept. And then like after a couple of experiences, I was like, wow, that's a horrible concept. And it's, a lot of people, I don't mean to throw shade. It's works for a lot of people, but there definitely are those occasions when you're like trying to put in just you're trying to play something through it, whatever it is, computer, your phone. And that's when you run into that problem. It's like, oh, I'm using my pre's on the front. How do I get into it? And then I forget, it was like, it's a 16-channel interface, but you can only use 12 channels or something that were analog, something weird like that. And it's like, how do you get to those last 4? Because I really need those last 4, and you have to be digital. And then you have the SPDIF function. And I just remember being confused a few times, being like, man, I can't wait till I get rid of this. And I never even had it. I never purchased it, but I found a few situations where people were asking me, so like, how do I do this workaround? And I think I always recommended you need to get an RME interface,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You'll actually have more channels. You'll actually end up being more convenient.
Well, that's the thing. Again, going back to yesterday, what was it? We had 32 channels. Again, Pro Tools limitation, because it's running native, even though it's Pro Tools Ultimate, and even though we pay, I don't know, $600 a year to maintain it, to be able to use it, etc. The limitation is 32 channels.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it's the first 32 channels of your interface.
Yep.
You can't pick and choose. So I can say I want to use 32 channels of MADI, but I want, it's basically taking up all the analog space on the interface, and then all the MADI inputs that I need, I cannot use in Pro Tools. In comes Total Mix, in comes that you mentioned, and you just read the last, 32 channels of MADI into the first 32 channels of whatever.
Yeah.
And it's an interface where any hole can be any hole.
Yeah.
It's on, on the setup and on the design of the interface and the software. So when you come up against these roadblocks, they're very easy to fix. And again, yesterday, for example, so again, for continuity in our world, Simon Hayes is going to be recording these actors basically performing the same piece, but on camera in the next couple of weeks. And so we wanted to have the same layout in the Pro Tools session as it would be in his recordings later down the line.
Yeah.
And we had, I think, 32 channels in total, but because of the Avid limitation and me needing to use some of those analog outputs to play stuff back, I only had 26 inputs in Pro Tools. Yeah. And we recorded the first 5, the main cast basically, did a pass of those. They were 1 through 5. And then when we recorded the rest of the group, we needed to keep the continuity rather than starting over at input 1. Basically, we needed to keep it going from 6 down onwards to 30, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And again, that came up as not an afterthought, but basically it wasn't discussed.
Yeah.
I didn't think to ask. He didn't think to. We basically were coming up with a workflow on the fly, right?
Yeah.
Actors are getting set up. Everyone's waiting, etc. And basically the interface on the M32 Pro you basically just go in and reroute everything in banks, whatever it is, in 5 minutes, and it is not a problem.
There you go. Yeah.
Flexibility again is your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, oh wow, we're 30 minutes from drop beat, and I'm dropping everything. You're like, I gotta route this. Wait a minute. It's like I remember I was doing something. So in the fall, I was working with a friend of mine. He's an artist, Jeff Lorber. He's a jazz fusion pianist, and we had Jeff, Gary Novak on drums, and Jimmy Haslip on bass, and we did an RME live session, and we had RME was kind enough to send out a 12 mic pre. I think that's how it's announced. That's how you call it. And I love it, and I just remember integrating. So he has an SSL console, then he has a Pro Tools Ultimate HD rig, and I was trying to integrate, okay, we're using the mic pre's on this thing, and somehow something got fidgety. But I went into the web interface. It's like, oh yeah, no problem. And then I was like, oh, but now I got to get a clock. And that was like the only thing, I think, doing the digital sync on it, because I had planned it out, I had mapped everything, but as you're practically implementing the devices, I was like, oh, my cable's a little short. I didn't plan on the length. I was like, darn it. So I had like 2 word clock cables, luckily I had the fittings to make the cables link to each other. Right. Everything worked. It was great. And yeah, but it was definitely, the nice part was the web browser interface, making things work just like Total Mix. Then you have the AVB web browser interface. And so, yeah, it's those, I gotta say, still consistently after 15 years. I mean, ever since the GUI interface for manufacturers, they've gotten better. You have different manufacturers doing their own concept of what they think the interface should be, so you convey the information effectively and efficiently. It's gotten better with all manufacturers, but I still have yet to see anything that makes me feel as comfortable as Total Mix. And
I think intimidates a lot of people when they first look at it.
That's the first word I hear from all my friends that become believers. They're like non-believers, like, I don't get this. I don't understand this. And I say 3 minutes to them. I walk them through it, or I send them to the website videos with and Andrea. No.
Adrian.
Adrian, that's right. I love Adrian. Sorry, I butchered his name. Adrian, yeah. Adrian, because when he updated the videos, now that I watched them, I was like, oh yeah, he says it great and people can see it graphically. It's a good video. So I'll talk to my friends. I'll be like, no, I don't want to see a video. Just talk me through it. So then it takes a little bit longer. We get a Zoom and I talk them through it. But most of the time I just go look at Adrian. He's really, and after they see those videos, they're just like, oh, how did I never do this? It's like, well, you just didn't know, and now you know.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the ideas are the simplest ones, and the idea behind Total Mix, right? And the interface is that you can separate your playback channels from your actual physical outputs, which had really been done before RME started doing it.
Yeah.
2 analog holes on your interface, or 5, 6 AES holes on your interface, and that was it. Yeah. Whereas with this flexibility, being able to separate the 2, your software holes from your hardware holes, basically, just completely changed the world and the workflow.
Yeah. So how is Mermaid, by the way? How long have you been on it?
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it.
Oh, sorry. Well, you're right. That's true. It's probably a super secret stuff. Well, how long have you been on it?
Oh, well, again, due to the pandemic, we started. I came onto the pre-production of it last January.
Wow. Okay.
And they've been going for at least 6 months before that, I think.
Wow. Yeah. And so when do you think it'll continue for production for what you're doing? If you can talk about it.
I don't know, actually. We're going for a couple of months at least.
And you're going to be in Sardinia those months?
Full steam ahead. June, we're supposed to be down there.
And then for how many? For a month or 2 months, or what are you going to be over there for?
A month. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. So working on a beach, in summer.
We'll see how it pans out.
Hey, Marie, any questions or anything?
I haven't seen any so far, Adam. No.
People are listening for for RME and for new friends and old friends. It's been great to Victor. This is letting people know this is only the second time we've talked, and it's been a great pleasure, both conversations. So
it feels like we've known each other for ages.
We kind of have, since we've been,
same trenches.
Same trenches. Same trenches. Yes. Yeah. So you, how long has it been since you were at remote over there, Henry Jackman and Zimmer and those guys?
Oh, I came to LA in 2010.
Okay. Yeah.
And I stayed there through 2017.
Wow.
So I started out with John Powell, interning and then working for him, and then moved over to remote and worked with Henry for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm. Did you transition John to his house up in the Palisades, to the studio up there?
No, that was before my time. So when he already had the new studio set up, basically.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is quite a space.
Yes. I've only seen pictures and heard from friends, and I'm like, man, maybe someday if I'm lucky enough, that'd be cool to see it. Yeah. Where did you live when you were in LA? What part of town?
Hung out in Palms. I actually started out when I first moved to LA. I lived in Malibu for quite a long time, for about a month.
Nice.
It was lovely. The only thing is, I was living in my truck.
You do what you got to do. Nothing wrong with that.
But the view was great.
Yeah.
The rent was cheap. So yeah, when I was interning for Powell, when I first moved in, I went to Columbia College Chicago, did the film program there, and we the last semester, the summer semester, was in LA, where we recorded our film scores, our short film scores at Capitol Records.
Nice.
And yeah, basically stayed in this rented apartment space and didn't really know what was happening. We were young and naive. And the program ended, we basically found out with a week's notice that we were going to get, everyone's disbanding, basically, when somebody needed to find places to live and work. And a lot of people went back, a lot of people stuck around. I refused to sort of try to sign a year lease without knowing what was going to happen.
Wow.
Interning at the moment, and it sort of went on a not even a weekly basis, but a daily basis. Especially when you're starting out. So I didn't want to sign up for a year without knowing what was going to happen tomorrow. So
it makes sense. It's tough.
I stayed on the beach. I had my, Ralph's?
Yeah.
I think at the bottom of the hill in Pacific Palisades. Oh no, Ralph's was on top. And what was the other one? I forgot.
Well, there's Gelson's up there. Gelson's up in the Palisades.
No, Gelson's was way too posh. What's the other one that's not Ralph's?
Oh, it's Vaughn's?
Yes, Vaughn's. Yeah. So Vaughn's at the bottom of the hill. Ralph's at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Paul's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So between the three of them, I can sort of go and not even shower. Let's call it refresh
Understandably,
One of the
okay.
bathrooms and like
Yeah.
buy a bit of breakfast and then
You
show
did
up.
this for a month. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was
This is
lovely.
great. Yeah, I mean,
It was
when you're
lovely.
young, yes, when we were young, yes, we can easily do these things. When we get older, we're like, man, yeah, it's like when we get older, it's tougher. It's definitely tougher. But
Yeah.
so
It was surreal.
that's a
And
great story.
then a friend of mine was staying at Chris Young's place
Oh yeah.
in Culver City.
Yep.
And he said, "Oh, the room's opening up. You should apply for it."
Yep.
And I went and applied, and it was a bit of a back and forth. And I said, "Look, I'm happy to stay in my truck and keep camping, but I need a room to put my things down in, so have more room to sleep." And then stayed at Chris Young's for a little while, and then a couple of guys from there, we found an apartment in Palms, not too far from Chris Young's place.
Nice.
Then once we started working remote with Henry and Hans and all of them, I was spending so much time in the studio that I needed to find a place as close to the place as possible.
So then you've decided, like, okay, I'm gonna rent a place to put my head down.
Yeah, basically. And if I could rent one across the street from the studio, then I would.
If you could rent a corner at Remote Control, he would do it.
Yeah.
I'll just put a little futon over here.
Too expensive.
Yeah. You're right. Even the alley space is too expensive. That's.
Wait, how did you start out?
So it was man, geez. So I came out here to go to grad school at UCLA. So I got accepted to UCLA, and I didn't. My intent was always to come to LA, and either I was going to come to LA to work in music, or I was going to come to LA and going to graduate school would help facilitate the process. And I got in, and so I was like, great, this is a better motivation, a better plan, we could say, to get out here. So I came out to UCLA, and I started my studies. And all along, I also had this ulterior motive. I knew about remote. I knew I wanted to. I was very interested in getting learning more, and I wanted to be an assistant or a tech or something. And I had read a magazine, a keyboard magazine, and in there was let's see. Hans said a little blurb, and then Jeff Rona was in this article, and I think there were one or two other composers. And I read the article, and at the end of the article, Jeff Rona had left his email. And so I emailed him and said, "Hey, I read your article on keyboard. This is great." And somehow from this email, I got to meet Jeff. And Jeff's like, "Well, I don't need an assistant. I don't need anybody. I'm good." I mean, he didn't not like that, but basically he had who he needed. He didn't need any additional hands. It's like, okay, but he goes, "I know somebody that may need an assistant." So it was a Brit. I forget his name. Conductor. He's not there. He's in London now. Not Simon. I forget who it was, but it was another person in the building. So I met him, lovely gentleman, and that kind of happened a couple of times. So from meeting Jeff, I had these other introductions, and one of the introductions led to a composer that I don't think I should say his name. He's not really welcome there. But I got to intern with him on Gladiator, and that led to like a really wonderful year of growth and learning, a lot of learning, good and bad. And then I got let go, and I was free, and it kind of changed. That whole experience led my life down a great path in production and music. And right after I was like, oh, actually, he let me go, and I started working for Hans. So then I was working for Hans for, I don't know, at least 10 months or something like that as one of his techs. And Ramin I always butcher his last name, Dawambi. He Game of Thrones and from that fame and the other HBO. He was picked up by the composer that let me go. Hans picked me up. So it was this little line. So the composer let me go, Hans picked me up, and then this composer picked up Ramin, and then Ramin has this amazing success. So that's how I got my start there. And then because I had worked there with Hans and this composer and kind of learned these concepts, learning about technology, production, RME is where I learned about RME. Everybody was like, "Oh, I want to, Adam, hey, I need a good tech. I need a good tech." So that got me a lot of years of work, and that basically from leaving Hans's place and going out on my own was an amazing experience in basically being my own business, I guess, being my own being a contractor for hire, and then just growing from that. I know a lot of people struggle with their transition from being an assistant to, they're like, I want to, I'm an assistant, but how do I become a composer?
It's scary.
It's frightening. Yeah, and I was like booted out into that. So I was forced to, you came to LA and you lived in your truck and you have this experience and this story. My comparison to that would be leaving remote and being like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And somehow
the way you, so especially in those places, you feel like there's nothing else out there.
Yes.
There's nothing.
I left and I was like, there's nothing. There's nothing. I'm not going to be able to work. I'm never going to work again. I had actually one composer that I worked for who I'll also will remain nameless. He's like, you're not going to work in this industry. You're never going to work. You're never going to have a career. He was just beating me down, which happens. There are, and to the people listening, there are lovely people to work with, and some people are a little more oppressive. I'll just say that. Yeah. So, but I just, but I did. I continued to work. I continued to work after working with this person, and I've had really amazing experiences, and it was quite a journey. And I'm actually glad that I was pushed out of remote control. Hans let me go on good terms, and it really did me well learning about being my own entrepreneur in post-production in music, and it was like one of the best things that ever happened to me. Yeah,
I think it's funny because the more people you talk to, you always feel so alone as well going through that experience.
Absolutely.
You don't really talk. Everyone finds it embarrassing to sort of part ways, let's call it that way, or getting fired, or
yeah.
That no one really talks about it, and the only way you sort of get out of the nest is by getting kicked. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I've had the same exact experience with you, where as you just described, basically when I went through work with Powell, and we parted on good terms. I worked with Henry, and we parted on good terms. We're still on very good terms.
Nice.
I still send him some of my tracks, whatever I'm working on, that I find he might find interesting, to see what the man thinks. And I've worked for a bit with James Newton Howard, which has been an incredible experience. My experience. So the usual route, right, that we all think we're going to go through is we're going to find an amazing to work with.
And it doesn't happen.
They're just gonna take us in, and they're gonna lift us up, and then they're gonna hand us over work, and then they're gonna support us for the rest of our lives, basically.
Doesn't happen.
And due to different circumstances in each case, basically, my blessing and a curse was working not with one, but 4 or 5 of these amazing composers at different times. And while I wasn't able to progress through this mythical career path was always described to us in school, or different schools for that matter.
Yeah.
I was able to see how each one of them worked, basically pick the cream of the crop in terms of ideas and technology, etc. And that's been incredibly helpful in my career, at least.
That's been one of the biggest things. Yeah, just learning, because I mean, I think what people need to learn is there is no key to success. There is no ideal path. It's a roundabout, circuitous set of events and circumstances, and you choose to embrace them or reject them. And depending on your attitude, you will succeed. And I wouldn't say necessarily fail. You just will choose to do something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did I ever think I would end up working in production on film?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Did I ever
Yeah.
think?
And you're still happy. It's like people are like, well, I have to be a composer. And it's like, well, you don't really know what, I mean, and as we're young, we don't really know what that term means. We think we know. It's like, well, it's creative, and I'm doing stuff for television, or I'm doing stuff for film, or I'm doing stuff for commercials, and that's what I'm going to do. And now in this industry, it's an amalgam of so many different attributes that we have to have. One of them, is having a business savvy, knowing people, knowing how to delegate, knowing how to manage up to producers, directors, coworkers, knowing how to manage down. And then there's the creative part, which is this whole other thing. And then there's this technology component. And one project might be, you better be kind of good at recording. And then another project might be, you better be good at sound design. And another project might be like, you don't know how to play guitar, so you better find somebody that knows how to play guitar.
And absolutely, and sometimes it changes, not even on the daily, but within a day on the hour.
Do you play guitar? No, we need a guitar player. Hold on a second.
Exactly.
Can you come over right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're busy? No, I'll double your wage. Whatever it is, I'll give you more money. Whatever you need. Walk out of wherever you are right now, and I will give you $300. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story.
But what I was saying is I had the exact same experience as you did, where finally at the end of my assistant career, let's call it that way, I ended up on the parking lot of a studio. I've sort of been parted ways with. Yeah. Let go. And but I need to pay rent, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And I, not to bring my partner into this, but I was on the phone with her, and she said, why do you think you'll never work again? Why do you've been doing fine like all of this time?
That level of sanity just doesn't it doesn't compute at that moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why do you think that's the last place you'll ever work?
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important. You brought up, there's like 3 key points basically that I find to this day as I started getting older and caring less. One of them is just reaching out to people. As you said, you reached out, you found an email address, and you reached out, because the worst that can happen from that is
nothing. You
just won't get an answer. You don't lose anything. And there's so many amazing relationships that I've sort of gotten into with people, including yours, is by just reaching out and sort of getting on the blower or emailing someone saying, hey, I've got a question, or I was wondering if you could help with this, or I can, and it's been as random as me finding an article with someone having a quote about something, using a piece of kit that I've never used before, and just reaching out to all, saying, oh, look, I found you. You guys are, I don't know, in Berlin and I'm in London or whatever. And I was just wondering, I saw your quote praising this bit of kit or this bit of software. Do you mind if I pick your brain about it?
Absolutely.
And half the time, no answer, and half the time you make friends for life, or acquaintances.
Absolutely.
The worst. The second is, don't be afraid. It's not even failure. I can't call that failure.
It's not failure.
Don't be afraid to accept a turn that you didn't expect.
Yeah, that's funny. Coincidentally, an old mate from remote, Jim Dooley. Jim Dooley. So he said that to me. Two things I remember from him. I mean, among other things, great guy. One thing he said was KISS, keep it simple. And then another thing he said, Adam, from expectation comes frustration. And I was like, yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. We have, as young artists and composers, producers, sound designers, engineers, recordists, we have these expectations of what we think our lives are going to be like or should be like. An example is everybody comes to remote control. I'm going to be the next Hans Zimmer. No, there's only one Hans Zimmer. Nobody else is going to be him. Yeah. And people come in, people come out, but there's only one Hans Zimmer. Be yourself. Be your own creative asset, attribute, advocate. And that's yeah. As I got older, I was like, oh yeah, okay. I need to balance my expectations and understand, this being an artist, it is definitely the path is a little more. It's not paved. it's definitely not paved. Yeah.
Basically, also just do what you enjoy and enjoy what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And the last point that I wanted to bring that I took away from your story as well as mine is just a bit of positive attitude here and there is all you need.
Positive attitude, good mates, good people.
No one wants to work with a Debbie Downer.
Nobody wants to work. Okay, I think this is the key in this conversation right now. If you are a Debbie Downer, change your attitude, because that will not get you hired on gigs. People will not hire you if they see you being a Debbie Downer.
And when you think you're working with everything we talked about today, when you think you're working with like another person or 10 people or 50 people or 100 people, and you think you're the only one with the problems that you're having and trying to solve them on the spot, all of them are having their own problems and they're all trying to solve them. And
absolutely.
The two ways: you can all be angry and sad, or you can just, this is what you signed up for. And
this is what we signed up for, and RME will solve all your problems.
Get an RME interface.
Get an RME interface. Yeah, if you're recording something or doing something technology wise, yes, definitely get an RME interface. But yeah, no, you're right.
Or if you're just feeling down.
If you're just feeling down, just get an RME interface. It will make you up. Yeah.
It'll make you so much better.
Yeah, it'll make you feel so much better. Marie, how are we doing? How's this going?
I mean, we've talked for an hour now, so.
Wow.
I knew we would. So Victor and I, the first time we talked over, we were just talking on the phone over, what's that, WhatsApp, I think it was?
Yeah, WhatsApp, I think. And we just called, because this has been in the making for a while now.
It has been in the making, and we talked for at least 45 minutes. We were just like, hey, what's up? And then we just started talking about shop and just like, oh, this and oh, that, and industry and tech and like, oh, this is good stuff. Should we stop talking? So I don't know. So it is 10 o'clock at your time. I'm sure tomorrow's another day for work. I'll start wrapping up. Marie, do you have any questions out there, or?
Let me see if there's any out there. It's been pretty quiet.
They don't know what they're missing. I'm upset with the world.
This will go on the extras of the DVD.
No questions out there. So I think we're clear to wrap this up.
Okay. Yeah. Hey,
All right.
Thank you. Marie, for bringing us together. I'm glad this is the first time I've seen Victor, so this is tremendous. Yeah.
Hopefully, it wasn't disappointing.
Not one bit. You know, so last time we talked, I think it was in January or February.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll talk again in like another month or two. we'll talk again.
I mean, we don't even need to go live. We can just
exactly. We can just WhatsApp and have a whiskey or a gin.
But yeah, long distance friendship.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, I'd love to talk more and just see what's going on. Just another conversation. So we'll talk offline.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Let me end the live stream here, guys. So
okay.
We're signing off here.
Bye, no one.
Bye, world.